Roxburgh, welcome to Coming Attractions.
Thank you for having me.
Have you spent much time in Newcastle previously? Tell me a little bit about your experiences here.
We had friends here when I was growing up, so we would occasionally make the trip up from Albury-Wodonga to Newcastle, but it was a very bit different beast in those days. It was the much more the kind of heavy minerals kind of period of Newcastle. So I'm amazed at what Newcastle is now, because it's a real eye opener for me how artsy and fantastic it is generally. It's great.
Now, I expect you've been to many festivals over the years, probably more in a sort of acting capacity. What's it like being at a festival now as a writer? How does that sit with you?
Oh, it's great. I love it. I mean, I love the I love the energy of festivals. Like, a festival is a good beast if there's a lot of kind of, effervescent enthusiasm around it. And obviously, because this is a young festival and people are excited about it, it's great. There's always a great vibe. And you get to meet, I've just met Julia Baird and I've always wanted to meet her, and so it's, there's all good stuff. There's only good to come from these things.
So you're here on the back of your first book, Artie and the Grime Wave.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is, folks.
That's it there.
Written and illustrated by Richard Roxburgh.
Yes.
We read that you got the inside scoop on whether your writing was any chop or not from your son, Rafi. So you learned a lot from the young fellow when you were writing it.
Absolutely. I mean, you're crazy to not kind of use and exploit free child labour whenever you can in this life. And I had an inbuilt source, obviously at home. So, yeah, I mean, I would read him chapters, and if he was kind of nodding off or scratching himself and looking around, I knew. And I did cut reams of stuff. So it was very good to, you've got to play to your audience, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was very useful.
Was there something exciting about being able to create an ensemble cast? I suppose as an actor you are able to focus in on one character, but you get to, I guess, be the conductor to a degree with your write a book.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I created my own ensemble cast. So, yeah, you're right. A lot of the time, obviously, as an actor, you're at other people's beck. You're at the beck of the story, the narrative that you're given, and you're also at the beck of the director, and then you're at the beck of the editor if you're doing a film or television. So, to be able to create something from scratch, an ensemble, as you put it, of players, and to, put them in all kinds of circumstances was really great. I found it incredibly liberating. Yeah.
I know a lot of the aspects of the book are sort of grounded in your own childhood experiences, I believe. Was it kind of hard to know where the line was as to sort of what was suitable and what wasn't suitable? What had to be left out?
What you couldn't read to Rafi.
Yeah. Well, I guess as a parent you have a kind of sense of where those lines are. I think it's always good to kind of to push kids, because kids, I think, love scary, and Roald Dahl got in a lot of trouble about this in his life because he wrote scary. He wrote genuinely scary stuff, and there were sort of, teams of librarians out with pitchforks at the time saying, this shall never be in my library because it's, terrifying for children. Of course, children love it. They loved it in droves and always have, because kids are open to, to scary. They're open to stuff. They're open to adventure. So what I really wanted to do was to create an adventure book that had a kind of cliffhanger quality, like a thriller quality to it for kids. Yeah. So, it's a thriller for kids.
I guess the obvious question is, are you going to write a second one now? I'm
definitely going to write other kids' books, because I just enjoyed the experience so much. But I'm quite interested in drawing on quite different territory for the next one. Okay. There may be a character or two who resurface at some stage. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, I'll definitely be revisiting.
Excellent.
If we could move into, I guess, a bit of future gazing, you cut your teeth as an actor on in plays, and then you've been in plenty of TV over the years. You've done some massive Hollywood films, and then really recently you've done Avalon Now, which is, I guess you'd call it's native advertising kind of But the streaming, and that's sort of where things are going now. Like, where do you see your profession heading in, I guess, the next 10, 20 years? Are movies still viable? Is the cinema still an experience people are signing up for, or is it what's on your computer?
Well, I think it's a really fascinating, very fluid time, obviously, in what we do. There is this particularly fantastic, what's being described as the golden age of television, and I do agree that it is a really thoroughly exciting medium that has a huge demographic, obviously gigantic, unbelievably big possibilities at all times. Film is really interesting because to do a film, I would say that a lot of the films that I've been in, some of the Australian films that I've been in over time, would just quite simply never get their money now. They would never get funded now. Yeah. Because they're art house, I suppose, for want of a better word. So I feel that, in a sense, film is going to become, it's like, some of these films that you see or hear about now, it's like they should almost be they should be screened in art galleries or something.
Right.
So, because I think the world of cinema is going to change. I think it's like, that's actually a work of art that you've done there. So don't talk to me about box office. Don't say to me, that this film by this Polish director, I saw this film called Ida that I just thought it was in black and white. It was brilliant. I mean, nobody would, I don't know anybody I know who would go and see that film. I loved it, but it's like, where do you watch that? I don't know. And it's an interesting question. And it's a really tricky question, because to me, that film was it was art. It was the most beautiful, in black and white. I mean, you could never make it in Australia.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, fluid time, and I don't know the answer to it.
So, just to interject, I guess. So do you think it's about acknowledging perhaps the divisions between what is an artistic endeavour and what is a Hollywood blockbuster to a degree?
I think it is, because you can't tell me that it makes any sense to put Martin Scorsese's Silence up against, the latest Deadpool, and say, well, that Scorsese's Silence is a failure because it, it only made, $2 million box office for the first week or whatever, because that's not a film that is going to make sense in terms of those numbers. It just doesn't. It's a work of art, and it has to be appreciated in a different way. And I think the money people, and I think civilization in general, hasn't been able to wrap their heads around how to make sense of that. It's a conundrum at the moment. It's a real conundrum.
You talked about the golden age of television, and there's some fantastic television being made now. From your perspective, is that where the interesting sort of characters and offers are coming from, or is it there's still some interesting offers coming from film as well?
There are still interesting films being made, but I think increasingly over time, it has definitely been that, there's just so much sunlight pouring into television. There's so much money pouring into television. And so, just obviously in terms of sheer arithmetic, a lot of interest is coming from that world. And to me, it's interesting as well. I mean, I sat down to start working on my second kids book, and I got sort of derailed and sort of accidentally started writing this 8-part series set in Tasmania, just because I'm kind of so enthused about television. So then I found myself in a writer's room, sort of workshopping that with writers at the end of last year. And
didn't run that one by Rafi?
What's that?
Didn't run that one by Rafi?
No, I didn't run that one by Rafi. No.
Richard, what was the best role that you just missed out on? You nearly got.
Well, that's a very good question. I've recently, while I was working in, because I've just done a production on Broadway, and on my day off, I flew to London to test for a job, I'm actually still. They have me in a holding pattern, and I'm still waiting to hear about that job. In the meantime, I was offered another job that I had to say no to because of the first job that is a really exciting one. This is all sounds very mysterious and enigmatic, but so.
Yeah, do you want to whisper it to
No,
us?
no, I most definitely can't. There's this extraordinary sort of cone of silence around it, but. If I miss out on that, I will be bitterly disappointed because it would be extraordinary and enormous fun. So I may be able to answer that question more thoroughly in a few weeks' time.
So you've got a record with Orson Welles as the
Apparently.
only actor to have played Sherlock Holmes, Professor Moriarty, and Dracula, which, as my brother pointed out, is kind of an obscure one. And Dracula, that's what makes it a bit weird. But I mean, you chuck in, I mean, you've had so many iconic characters. What was the one that you perhaps had the most fun with, that was the best role?
Of those ones?
Oh, no, of all. I mean, you...
Of anything?
Of anything.
We won't bottleneck you on this.
Oh, well, oh, wow. You mean theatre or film and television?
It's
or
your
anything? That's my
dealer's
answer.
choice. Oh, wait, I'm the dealer. Anyway, don't worry.
Well, look, I mean, it's probably going to sound a little wanky, but doing Hamlet was a kind of rite of passage that was a really important, kind of amazing, terrifying thing in my life. And you realise when you, because I did it at the end of the 90s, and it was so brutal and awful, but fabulous. It was a great production.
Who did you do it with?
With
sorry?
Neil Armfield. So I had, it was an incredible company of players at that time. So Geoffrey Rush played Horatio, and Kate Blanchett played Ophelia, and so it was this, and Jacek Koman played Claudius. It was a beautiful company of players, and it was a incredibly strong, beautiful, intimate production.
Rush is coming off an Oscar at that stage as well, isn't he?
No, it was just before that madness. So.
So you didn't have to deal with his ego then?
No, you always had to deal with that. Yeah. But as you can imagine, it was a great company of people. So that was a big instrument in my life. We did a 2-part series called Blue Murder in the 90s as well.
Roger
which was
Rogerson.
about
Yes.
Rogerson.
Yes.
And that was an extraordinary opportunity, I guess, because I've always considered myself a character actor. So in my 30s, to be able to play a character with that kind of reach and to be able to say I can go there was a great opportunity for me as well. And a lot of it, is down to luck. I was lucky in that instance because Brian Brown said no.
Really?
To that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, right.
Did you meet Roger?
No, I've never met him.
You might not get to meet him.
It's become increasingly difficult.
Yes, behind the perspex, it was lovely.
Though I know where to find him now. At least, yeah.
You guys can move forward. I think we've covered what I was going to ask.
Oh, okay. We're up to the. What's been your worst review?
Oh, my worst review. Well, I don't read them anymore and haven't for a long time. And I'll tell you why. Because I was doing a play at the Sydney Theatre Company one time, and there was an actor who was a famous kind of lunatic. He was a wonderful guy, but he was addicted to everything. He was a junkie. He was a kind of, into everything. And we were doing a play at the Opera House, and that guy came on stage, or he came in to perform off chops, like completely off chops. And it was our second night. And there were reviewers in the audience that night, and I couldn't believe the performance, because he was playing this character called Sparkish. It was a restoration work, and so the performance was normally incredibly lively, and on this night he was kind of, and forgetting lines, and so the director was running back at interval and cutting all of his stuff for the second half. Then the review came out. A review came out of. Because the company rang around the next day and said, look, we're very sorry, could you come back again, to the critics? And this critic from this particular newspaper said, oh, who was the actor who was not well? And they said, well, this person. And they said, oh, how amazing, I've just given that person a complete rave. And I read this review, and it said, But as for Blah Blah's haunting interpretation, the highlight was this haunting interpretation of the role. And when I read that, I thought, I am never going to read, because obviously, you know, there's madness in there. And so, and the other thing is, if you believe it when they say that you're brilliant, you have to believe it when they say you're shit. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So that was a very long-winded way of saying, but I've had some shocking reviews. I mean, I can remember saying, I did a play called a Carol Churchill play, and I got a review which described me as a sort of mad puppet or something. So, I mean, you get terrible things said about you. Yeah.
You've worked with, the biggest names in the industry. Who would you never work with again?
In comes the curveball.
I'm going to have to, as the Americans say, plead the fifth. But I will say that I did work with a really very famous actor who I was so excited about working with, and you know, because
sorry, everyone
real
just get
imagine
it in your head who he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right now.
And you know, he was an older actor by the time I worked with him, and he was an absolute, unadulterated bastard of a man, and I was so bitterly disappointed by his behaviour. So yes, but beyond that, you'll not get a name from me.
I asked it the wrong way around. I was supposed to sugarcoat it first and trick you into saying the wrong one.
That's right.
Who would you absolutely
Rookie
work
error.
with again?
Yeah, that's a good question. Who would you work with again?
Oh well, I mean, there are people who I always go and work. You know, yeah, that's right. I've just finished with working with Kate Blanchett again, and so we have a long, ongoing sort of theatre marriage, her and I. So we've done so many things over the years. So we always love working together. So I always like going back, working with her. Always a pleasure.
But just we've got a couple more. You've got a film called Breath coming out. What can we expect from that? I mean, Simon Baker was at the helm, is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think, Simon was kind of incredibly detailed as a director, and took it incredibly seriously. And I think from what I've seen, it looks extraordinary. I mean, because he had these whole underwater sequences that I've never seen anything like it. It looks absolutely beautiful. So, yeah.
Did you get to work with Tim Winton at all? Was he on the set? I mean, that's someone to talk to about the craft of writing, right?
Yeah. Tim was on set for a bit. I know Tim because I've sort of had various dealings with Tim over the years, and he's such a terrific human being. I love him dearly. I actually adapted one of his books, That Eye the Sky, to the stage at one point. And so I met him through that, and we've sort of stayed in contact over the years. But I didn't see him that time. But yeah, he's just great and incredibly generous as a writer, because I think it's hard letting your work be sort of adapted to other formats, isn't it?
Well, it's your baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I suppose when it comes to things like books, perhaps there's a picture in one's head as well about the characters and the way in which they interact, and so many different facets that are your own. And I guess everyone's experience when reading a book is like that as well. And when you see something adapted, you're like, oh, but that's not my character.
Yeah, but he's
Who's
amazing.
This Daniel Radcliffe kid? He's not happy.
But he's amazing in the way that he is open to accepting other people's interpretations of exactly what you're talking about. I think he's kind of, because you'll have conversations with him. We say, well, is this character like this for this reason? And he'll think, oh no, I'd never thought that. Oh, but that's a great idea. Yeah, why not? Yeah, of course, you can be like that for that reason. That's great. And so I think he's always, available to the matter of other artistic input with his stuff, which is which a lot of writers are uneasy about.
Have you thought at all about Artie and the Grime Wave? Have you cast it in your head for the big screen interpretation?
No, I haven't done that yet. But who knows what the future holds? Maybe a musical. That'd be great.
Hey,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Matilda's doing particularly
Yeah,
well.
that's
at the
right.
moment.
That's right.
Yeah, so Indeed.
Dan can write. Hey, he's a decent musician.
Really?
So yeah.
There you go, Dan.
Yeah, get in there.
I'll be in contact.
Well, I think, yeah. Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to speak to us on
Pleasure.
coming attractions. Richard Roxburgh, this has been amazing and really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thank
for being
you.
generous with your time.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Good.
Cheers.
Good to meet you, gentlemen.
An absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's good, guys. Come on. With your blue tick and your...
Joe. Joseph.
Oh, Joe, for the...
Come on, Joe.
Oh, how
Don't keep
many...
the man waiting.